Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today for this Intergovernmental Coordination Committee meeting. And if everyone can take their seats, I'm going to call it to order. In the back, I believe Angelita has the sign-up sheet for public comment. She is back there wearing a cute tan sweater. And if you need a folder, Amanda, who is wearing a gray jacket, can help you out. Does everyone have paperwork? All right, wonderful, wonderful. All right, if it's all right with everyone, I'm just going to start this off with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, please bless us that we'll make wise decisions today. Please bless us that we will remember that we do the people's work. We're thankful for all of our many blessings, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. All right, so today we're going to be taking up measures Senate. We're calling it to order, Senate Bill 333. And I'm looking at LC 472744S. And if Senator Clint Dixon could come up and present the bill to us. Thank you so much for coming today, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, committee members. I'm here before you today to bring before you for consideration SB 333. The proposal, if passed on a referendum by the citizens that are affected, would create the city of Mulberry. The reason for the outcry for the city, simply two words: it's local control. Currently in this area that I represent, kind of the geographical area in Gwinnett County, the northern border to it would be Hall County in the town of Brazelton. To the east, it would be Barrow County. To the south, it would be Highway 324, and then to the east, it would be roughly right where 85 intersects. So it's kind of that area. Geographically, it's roughly about 41,000 folks that live there. And simply what's happening there is you've got a county commissioner that represents the area who's kind of taken a stance on high-density residential zonings and apartment zonings. There's roughly about 14,000 apartments in the area. And he wanted to pump the brakes on that because of infrastructure issues dealing with traffic, especially at the 85 and Hamilton Mill corridor. We got major traffic concerns there. And unfortunately, to many measures that come before him, or several, dealing with apartments and high-density residential zonings, where he was voting going to turn down the zoning for several different reasons, would be outvoted by commissioners that don't represent the area, and they would actually vote and approve those zonings, and not listening to the residents nor representing the residents in that area. And as far as governance, it would be a five-member city council panel that would have districts. It would not be at large. They would roughly represent 7,000 to 9,000 residents. Currently, there's 4 district commissioners in Gwinnett County. Our population's right at 1 million people. Each one of those district commissioners roughly represents currently 250,000 residents. In my opinion, dealing with local governance, especially the county commission, and what they have to govern over, dealing with land use, dealing with DOT issues, dealing with property tax issues, and all the things that they have to deal with, having that many constituents and being responsive to them, I think is very difficult. My Senate district is roughly 200,000 people, to kind of put it in perspective. So this would bring that down to more local control. The 3 areas that the city would govern over would be land use. It would also be code enforcement and stormwater runoff, is what the 3 uses that are proposed. There would be no property tax levied. The property tax that's currently collected by Gwinnett County would still be collected by Gwinnett County, but there would be no additional property tax collected. We had a feasibility study done. It came back that the revenue that would be generated by the city would be roughly $9.4 million. The expenditures were estimated at 7.9, so roughly about $1.5 million surplus the city would have from the onstart of the city. And if you ask where the revenue would come from if we're not levying any property tax, there's several factors, but the majority of it would come from dealing with ad valorem car tax. You would also have insurance premium fees, and these are all currently still collected by Gwinnett County. So there would be no additional fees to that. Occupational business tax or licensing, and then also building permits and inspection fees. That would be a majority of where that revenue would be generated from. We also, through this feasibility process, Leader Restoration and I, we held 3 town halls from December through January, where we had a lot of input from citizens, and we also had a phone town hall, and there was also a mailer sent out to all affected citizens, and a website was set up. So we worked very hard to get the message out, so all the citizens, not the ones that were just reaching out to us, were made aware and could have input on the city, and we had overwhelming support for the city creation. Most folks that we talked to were very excited about having that local governance. And then also something I failed to mention, this would all be unincorporated Gwinnett that would be incorporated there, and it would be the second largest city population-wise. With that, and then also you may hear from some opponents today, about the effect on Gwinnett County and the possible tax increase and the effects that it might have on all of Gwinnetians. And I would like to say that these citizens would still be Gwinnetians, even if the city is formed. But currently, Gwinnett County, their budget is about $2.5 billion. The estimated loss that we've heard from Gwinnett County and then also from the feasibility study is right at $9 million. So you're looking at 0.34% of the total budget. And I would argue that that number will come down if the citizens decide to vote in the city or vote for the city, and it is formed and the city council is elected, and the mayor, then they would go through service delivery agreements with the county, where a lot of the services that aren't provided by the city, dealing with public safety, also road maintenance and other issues, the city would pay their fair share of that. So I think that number would come down ultimately. But Madam Chairwoman, would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I wanted to make it clear as well, this is a general bill. So this means that if it passes this body, it will go to rules and be voted on in rules. It would be voted on singularly. It will not be on a local calendar. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that fact. We have a couple of questions. All right, who do we have? I believe Representative Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, you mentioned there's a feasibility study for this. I know typically when these cityhood bills go through our Government Affairs Committee, it's usually UGA or Georgia Tech, sometimes Valdosta State, I think. What organization did the feasibility study here?
This one, let me flip back to it was, I had it right here in front of me. I've got too many papers in my
I understand.
Book here. It was prepared by KB Advisory Group Incorporated, which is located here in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't a university feasibility study.
No, it
Okay.
wasn't.
And I know this is in here, but I haven't had a chance to read it. What is the date of election for the referendum? Is it going to be in November along with the rest of the general election?
It would either be in May as far as when the referendum would go out for the citizens to vote on it. It would either be in May with the general primary, or the general election in November.
Okay, so that's not part of the bill. When does that get decided as to when the referendum goes up for election?
I think it would be as far as timing of when this is, whenever we get the governor to sign it and it's passed by both bodies.
Got it. I'm always a champion of doing it in November. I feel like you get better turnout and better informed electorate by then. Okay, excellent. And then you mentioned it's a 5-member city council. None of these are at-large seats, so they're all geographically tied to where the city council member lives?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And then also would add, the mayor would be elected by the 5 city council members. So it would be one of those city council members would be elected by that body.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Representative Holland, for your question. Chairman Carson, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. And I just wanted to voice my support for this, but in regard to local control, we've seen the strain that has been placed on infrastructure without quality growth. As you know, I carried a city bill a couple years ago. I'm wondering, what are the 3 services that are being provided by the city, or would be provided by the city of Mulberry? What is the plan for that?
Yeah, so it would be zoning, it would be yeah, zoning, it would also be stormwater runoff, and then code enforcement would be the three services.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, wonderful. All right, there we go. My flashing went away for a moment. I do apologize. Representative Alexander, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at the back of the study by KB, and it's saying that they're not taking any responsibility, or they're not assuming any responsibility as it relates to this study. Is that correct? It's on the back of it, I guess, page 30. It says no responsibility is assumed for inaccuracies in reporting by the client, its agents or representatives, or any other data source used in preparing or presenting this study.
Yeah, what I could answer there is they do, you know, multiple studies like this annually, and they've done this in accordance like they would do any other viability study.
Right, so most studies, I guess, are done for 2 years, or in 2 years?
And I would not dare to try to say that I know the House rules, but in the Senate, there is a committee rule to that, but it's not, you know, a constitutional rule or any kind of legal rule. It's a committee rule.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Representative Alexander. Let's see. Hang on a second. I believe we've got Vice Chairman Anderson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. If you can stand by for just a moment, appreciate that. All right, Representative Park.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Senator Dixon, I had a few questions, if I may.
Sure.
On a few different issues. But first, you know, with respect to local control, you know, I certainly understand and support the ability of residents in this area to vote. But is it not true that a majority of the local delegation does not support this bill?
No, I would argue, you know, in the Senate, that this whole geographical area, I'm the only senator that represents that area. As far as where the entire delegation stands, we never voted, so I don't know the will of the entire delegation.
Senator Dixon, with respect to local control, is it not true that if this bill passes, or if there's a referendum that the people end up supporting this November, that the entire county would have to redo all 16 of its service delivery contracts with every single one of its cities, in which, if this bill passes, again, it would have a county-wide impact to the second largest county in the state of Georgia. Is that not true?
I disagree with you, Representative. Not to say that they wouldn't have to change or go through those service delivery contracts, not disagreeing with you there, but as far as a county-wide impact, I mean, you're talking about a budget of $2.5 billion. The estimated impact from the county and the feasibility studies, $9 million. You know, once those service delivery contracts, if the citizens do choose and vote in favor of cityhood, they would have that negotiation with the county, and some of those costs actually would be recouped by the county dealing with public service, public safety rather, and dealing with DOT. So I believe that number comes down, which makes that impact less than 0.34% of the county budget. So I don't believe it will impact the entire county.
So Mulberry would be the largest new city by population in Gwinnett County, is that correct?
Second largest to Peachtree Corners.
And you expect that will require less services from the county, not more?
No, they currently serve those residents, and those residents would still be Gwinnett County citizens.
Okay, so moving on to kind of the next kind of line. You know, my understanding is that this is a city light proposal that you know, would have been prohibited by pending legislation, bipartisan legislation today, that would have been prohibited by existing rules of the Governmental Affairs Committee, and in which one of our folks from Legislative Council, Jeff Lanier, a few years ago, published a memo saying that these sort of city-light proposals are unconstitutional in violation of the supplementary powers clause of the state constitution. And so, do you have any concerns with the potential unconstitutionality of this proposal, in which, if it does pass, and my understanding is that this says the city will not charge taxes, but that's essentially severed if this is litigated in court, would that not essentially result in additional taxes for these residents, in which, I mean, again, I'm concerned, one, with the unconstitutional nature of the proposal, and then two, in terms of additional taxes for residents. Do you not have any of those concerns with this proposal?
Not at all. I
explain
would
why?
argue that there's been several cities created in the same manner. Peachtree Corners was created. It's a vibrant, successful city. I would imagine that the city of Mulberry would follow that same path. And, quite frankly, if the citizens felt like they were getting represented as they should have, this would not even be an issue. But unfortunately, you've got commissioners that have not been elected by these people, do not represent these people, and they're imposing their will against the will of these citizens. And that's the reason for the formation, or the proposed formation of this city.
Last question. Again, normally this cityhood process takes about 2 years to ensure that the county and the disruptive effect that this will have, again, on the second largest county in the state of Georgia, is mitigated, and so that both new residents have as accurate information as possible, and the county is actually able to conduct a academic-based feasibility study. Why is there such a rush for this proposal when any sort of ongoing development proposals have otherwise been scaled back? So again, why the rush, especially if you want to ensure the success of this city as we move forward?
I would go back to my previous statement that these citizens do not feel represented because their commissioner that they elected has taken a stance on certain zonings, and I'm not just talking about one case, there's been several, and commissioners in other parts of the county that have not been elected by these people, do not represent these people, or imposing their will against what these citizens want. So that is for the rush, but we have followed all procedures. Like I said, we've had 3 town halls, we had a phone town hall, we've done a mailer, we've got a website, we did a feasibility study, and it's, in regards to the county, it's my understanding that once the citizens vote, if they choose to incorporate, then you would get those studies done by the county and completed by them, because they don't know the numbers until the city council and the mayor's elected, and then they have those service delivery negotiations. So I would think that we are moving quickly, but there's an urgent need for it.
So 2 more questions, if I may. One, is it not true that there was bipartisan Democrats and Republicans on the Gwinnett County Commission passed a resolution asking this body to slow down this process? So again, including a Republican member that y'all created, that he also supported a resolution asking this body to slow down on this process. Is that not true?
The chairwoman of my delegation in the Senate, I was never shared that document to see it, but did hear about it, did talk to the commissioner that's seated in District 4, and what he told me that he was neutral on the position. So,
and so last question, just in terms of like when a feasibility study should be done. Again, I think your response is confusing to me, because if I was a resident of Mulberry, I would want as much accurate information as possible in voting for that city. So, for example, I'm not voting for more local taxes or voting for more government unnecessarily that may not address some of the development-related concerns that y'all are talking about. But again, my hope is that we will be deliberate with this process as the best way of ensuring its success. But again, your position essentially is we should put this on the ballot and then do a study afterwards. Is that correct?
So what I would say was that we've been very deliberate. I know you don't represent these people either, So you may not be privy to all the meetings that we've had and the town halls. We've been very forthcoming to the citizens. There's a strong outcry from these citizens. They came to us. It was not a county commissioner that came to us. These citizens came to us and said, what can you do? Can you help? What can you do to help us? And we don't have governance over zoning, but through those conversations, the talk of cityhood, so we could have more local representation so they could control their own destiny, is where that all came from. But I would say that we've vetted this very well. We've had the viability study. We've had the town halls. We've gone through all the appropriate procedures. So I think it's been vetted very well, and there's nothing more American than letting the citizens of a certain area vote their own destiny.
So more government is your solution to the problem. Thank you.
Well, they have lack thereof government because they're getting the will of commissioners that don't represent them nor been elected by them, or trying to make decisions on their area. So creating more local control is what these folks are asking us for.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Leader Evstration, go with your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, isn't it true that all legislators who represent the area impacted by this bill, where this proposed city would be, have signed the legislation? That's yourself, that's myself, and Representative McCollum signed legislation in a companion House bill. Is that true?
That is true.
And isn't it true that actually a Democrat member of the Georgia House of Representatives, Representative Mughal, also signed this bill? So there's bipartisan support for this legislation.
Yes, that is true, Mr. Leader.
Isn't it true that the resolution that the minority whip referenced, passed by Gwinnett County, is similar in form and language to the resolution that was passed at the time Peachtree Corners was proposed here at this Capitol?
Very similar.
And isn't it true that Peachtree Corners has been regarded as a resounding success since it was created in 2012?
That is also true.
As for the question as to constitutionality, isn't it true that there is no existing case law that states that a city light proposal is unconstitutional?
That is true.
So no member here is able to cite, or witness is able to cite to specific case law supporting the position that it's unconstitutional. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
And isn't it true that by this city, proposed city, if it's enacted by the voters in a referendum, would actually be taking over certain services which are currently provided by Gwinnett County, thereby providing potentially a savings to Gwinnett County for the expense of providing those services?
That is also true.
And finally, isn't it true that Gwinnett County currently has a population of about 1 million residents with 4 district commissioners, meaning each county commissioner who has a district represents approximately 250,000 residents?
That is also true.
Isn't it true that none of the county commissioners reside in this proposed city of Mulberry?
That is true.
Isn't it true that if this is passed and again approved by the voters on a ballot, that there would then be 5 districts allowing council members to represent 7,000 to 9,000 residents, a much smaller population, which would allow residents in the area to voice their concerns to a more locally elected representative on that council who could reflect their wishes for the future of the community?
That is also true, and would like to make a statement. Was never a county commissioner, but did serve for 9 years on the planning commission dealing with land use in Gwinnett, representing District 4, and would say that there were 2 of us per district. And, as we came out of the recession, it became very difficult for us to work through those zoning cases, even being 2 of us, where we had a backlog of several months trying to get through those land use cases because they are very complicated and complex.
All right, thank you, Leader Evstration. And Speaker Pro Tem Jones, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple questions, or just a few. Is it not true that Gwinnett County has 16 existing cities in the county?
That is true.
And is it not true that you seek to provide the people of what might become the city of Mulberry the same opportunity to have government closer to the people as the residents of Gwinnett County that live in one of those 16 cities?
That is true, Madam.
Is it not also true that this legislature has about a 19-year history in the largest counties of giving citizens the ability to determine if they want government closer to the people, and it all began with Sandy Springs back in 2005.
That is also true.
And is it not further true that in a majority of the local delegations in DeKalb County and Gwinnett County opposed the creation of the cities of Tucker, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Milton, Sandy Springs, and Johns Creek?
That is also true.
And is it not further true that in all those cases, all those cities are considered very successful, fiscally sound cities that other areas seek to emulate?
Also true, Madam Pro Tem.
And is it not further true that if the suggestion that more governments means more government is true, then I would encourage my fellow legislators that believe that to seek to repeal the existing charters of the 16 other cities that exist in Gwinnett County and frankly throughout the entire state. Perhaps we could just put everything at the state level, which would mean, to continue along that line of thinking, less government.
Also true.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Speaker Pro Tem Jones, for your question. Representative Adesanya has a question as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Dixon, can you tell me which Gwinnett County Commissioner represents any part of Mulberry?
It'd be Matthew Holcamp, Commissioner Holcamp.
Does he support this measure?
I'm sorry?
Does he support this measure?
He is neutral to the measure, is what he's indicated to me verbally.
Well, we had a flyer on our desk today, and he outrightly said that he is not neutral. In fact, he's the main person who knows that area more than many of us here, and he's saying he's not neutral, and he opposed this measure.
Yeah, what I would say is, had a conversation with him actually Friday after this bill was passed off the Senate floor, and he indicated to me, and like I said, I've heard about the letter. I haven't seen it. The chairwoman of the Senate delegation, I've not seen the letter, but he said that there were words put into his mouth by her and other legislators that he remains neutral to it. So you can't speak to the letter directly, but that's what he's told me verbally.
Well, I would encourage you to, check with that. And,
Yeah, but I would also would like to say
neutral.
that I also represent these people, and while I do have great respect for Commissioner Holcamp, these folks have elected me and have had a huge outcry from them coming directly to myself and Leader Efstration, needing help and wanting representation in the area, especially dealing with zonings. So I'm hearing from my constituents, and I do represent all of these people. So I would say that I have heard from them.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All right, at this time, we do have 4 people who have signed up to speak for or against the bill. So, Senator, if you could take a break for a
Thank you,
moment.
Madam
We're going to
Chairwoman.
let them have public comment. We're going to limit our public comment because there are other activities happening in the building, and we have people that need to get to those activities. So our public comment is going to be limited to 15 minutes. So I encourage all of you to be kind and gracious to your fellow speakers. If you use 14 minutes, they get 1 left, so just be aware. So our first person is going to be, and forgive me, Mike. Thank you. I apologize. Thank you so much. And you are from the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners, is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Are you a commissioner?
I am not. I'm the county attorney
Okay,
for
thank
Gwinnett
you.
County. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As I said, my name is Mike Ludwizak, and I'm the county attorney for Gwinnett County. I want to thank you and Leader Efstration for the opportunity to speak today regarding this bill and to share the concerns of Gwinnett County. As you may already know, with almost 1 million residents and close to 9% of the state's population, Gwinnett is the second largest service provider in the state of Georgia, second only to the state of Georgia. These services are critically dependent on the county's ability to plan accurately and to maintain adequate revenues to fund these services. As the governing authority of the county, the Board of Commissioners has the responsibility to represent the interests of all its residents, both in the unincorporated and incorporated areas. Part of this responsibility is to provide information to facilitate well-informed decisions concerning legislation such as this, which will necessarily affect the delivery of services and the means to pay for these services for all of Gwinnett's residents. And so I want to extend the Board of Commissioners' appreciation as well. Among these concerns, as been stated, is the loss of revenue to Gwinnett, which we have estimated using fiscal year 2023 data to be a minimum of $9.1 million annually. Revenue loss which can be recouped by increasing taxes and other services, fees, or reducing service levels. I caution that this is an estimate only, as we have not had the opportunity to obtain a fiscal impact study. Perhaps even more concerning, as has been mentioned, will be the forced and premature renegotiation of the existing SDS for Gwinnett and its 16 cities. Extensive negotiations in 2020 resulted in an efficient service delivery model which serves all of Gwinnett's residents. This comprehensive strategy, as reflected in over 800 pages of detailed agreements, was approved by the Community Affairs Department in 2020, with the next update not being due until February of 2029. The incorporation of a 17th city will necessarily trigger an earlier review and renegotiation and result in changes to service costs. As part of this negotiation process, and as acknowledged in the private study supporting Mulberry, it will necessarily be required to enter into agreements with Gwinnett or other entities to provide services at costs that are yet to be determined. In fact, we suspect that the future cost of services may be substantially more than the estimated cost of services in the private study. I say this in part because the cost estimates in the private study were based on fiscal year 2022 numbers. The study itself cautioned readers that these numbers may not be reliable, quote, as fiscal year 2022 immediately followed the state's emergence from the COVID pandemic. It may not have necessarily been a typical year for most of the comparable cities. Given the unprecedented rate of inflation that we're all familiar with that has occurred over the past year, and that the future cost of services will ultimately be determined by agreements yet to be negotiated, the cost estimates in the private study can't be relied upon with any degree of certainty. In light of this concern, the prudent course of action for you to take would be to follow the customary two-session process for the incorporation of new cities, which would at least allow for your consideration of normalized fiscal year 2023 service cost numbers. Now, I know that the proposed city has been compared several times to Peachtree Corners. I'll discuss just one revenue source, occupation taxes, to show why this comparison ultimately fails. The private study states that Mulberry will be, quote, primarily a city of homeowners occupying single-family detached housing. Non-residential property will make up less than 5% of its total tax base, the smallest percentage of any city in Gwinnett. This contrasted residential Mulberry with, quote, commercially developed Peachtree Corners, which in fiscal year 2022 brought in almost $4 million in occupation taxes. By comparison, the private study cautiously states we believe it is possible that Mulberry could generate occupational taxes of roughly $1.05 million. This is about a quarter of what Peachtree Corners generated in 2022 occupation taxes. Even more concerning is that the county's estimate, using normalized fiscal year 2023 numbers, is less than half of this amount. This is just one example, and there are others, of why Mulberry cannot be compared to Peachtree Corners. In addition to these financial concerns, Gwinnett also has several legal concerns related to this legislation. It purports to create a so-called city light, one limited to providing only 3 services, and is prohibited from collecting property taxes to fund these services. The legislation provides that these restrictions may only be removed by way of another voter referendum. Put simply, these restrictions are legally unenforceable, as stated by this body's Office of Legislative Counsel in 2015, by the Senate Incorporation Study Committee in same year, and by the Carl Vinson Institute when it reviewed Peachtree Corners Charter in 2017. The Constitution expressly prohibits the General Assembly from limiting any such powers or services except by way of a general law that would apply statewide to all cities. These experts have all concluded that city-like charter provisions are unenforceable. The import of this is that regardless of this legislation's stated restrictions on services and property taxes, if Mulberry is incorporated, it will immediately have full legal authority to provide all services authorized by law, not just the three that are called out, to impose property taxes and utility franchise fees, and to do so without a voter referendum. This is why in 2015, the Senate Study Committee recommended prohibiting the city-like concept from being included in future legislation. It also recommended, quote, that language be inserted into charters containing a millage cap that clarifies that the caps can indeed be increased by a city council through its home rule powers and without voter approval. It's why in 2018, this body amended the charter of Peachtree Corners to remove similar unenforceable restrictions on services. And finally, it is why legislation has been introduced in this body to prohibit the creation of city lights. If Peachtree Corners is going to be held up as an exemplar for the incorporation of Mulberry, then as recommended by the Senate Study Committee and as recently legislated by this body for Peachtree Corners, these unenforceable provisions should first be amended and clarified. They should make absolutely clear to referendum voters that Mulberry will immediately have full legal authority to provide all services and impose property taxes, utility franchise fees without a voter referendum. This is Gwinnett County's request of you. It is also concerning that this legislation provides that if Mulberry is incorporated, Gwinnett will be prohibited from modifying zoning during the 2-year transition period, effectively enacting a moratorium on zoning until the city can assume responsibility. These immediate restrictions, which provide that they conflict with state law, which provides that counties continue to provide services to a new city during the transition period unless the city and the county agree otherwise. Because of all of this, Mulberry could immediately face the costly challenge of defending a moratorium in court. These are costs that were not considered in the private study. In addition, it does not appear that the new city meets the legal density requirements for a new city. The private study, which provided such an extensive analysis of land use within the proposed city, failed entirely to address this threshold density requirement for incorporation under state law. As noted earlier, Peachtree Corners has been cited as an exemplar for the successful incorporation of a city in Gwinnett. However, if you're to truly follow the same process, it would necessarily involve a careful, deliberate planning process that occurred over a 2-year period prior to legislation being enacted. There was a fiscal study for Peachtree Corners, which was made publicly available in March of 2010. Legislation was not introduced until the following year. Regarding this process, the private study itself references a 2020 infographic prepared by the House Budget and Research Office that summarizes this process. The House infographic states the legislative sponsor files the bill, beginning a 2-session review process. The committee will study the proposed city over the interim and vote on the legislation during the 2nd session after its introduction. And this, in addition to the clarifying changes to the legislation, that's the other request of the Board of Commissioners, that you follow the customary deliberate process, the same process that you followed for Peachtree Corners. Allow the time necessary for the careful study and thoughtful deliberation that the proposed incorporation of what would immediately become the largest city in Gwinnett in terms of land area and the 2nd largest city in terms of population surely deserves. This would allow Gwinnett the time to obtain a fiscal impact study by a Georgia Public University partner, a study which the infographic notes takes 6 months or more to complete, and that has been our experience, so that all Gwinnett residents, and particularly those potential residents of Mulberry will have a full and complete understanding of how this new city would impact them. These residents deserve no less. And on behalf of the Gwinnett County Board of Commissioners, I want to thank you again for this opportunity.
All right, thank you so much for your comments. All right, up next we have Mark Middleton. We graciously froze the time so you don't have to run. All right, sir, go ahead.
My name is Mark Middleton. I'm here in my individual capacity. I'm a resident of Peachtree Corners from around 2000 until approximately 2020. I was involved with the creation of Peachtree Corners both as a volunteer in the effort to create the charter, and then also after we passed House Bill 896 that created the original charter, was involved with the campaign on the resolution. And I had an opportunity to participate in one of the recent town hall meetings that Leader F. Strachan, Senator Dixon, and others organized, and was asked to come up and just relay some of the things that I said that night in terms of the experience that I had. The citizens of Peachtree Corners at the time in question had the same concerns that were expressed by the citizens at that town hall meeting. They were concerned about land use. They were concerned about code enforcement, and they were looking. The folks in our area of the county just didn't feel like they were being well represented. And so what they chose to do was create the city, and just as was indicated, we did go through a very laborious process. But I would add that that bill that passed that was a city light concept. It was created in that 2011 session after the work had been done by the Carl Vinson Institute and the other work that had gone into it. So the other thing I would say is that regardless of what has happened subsequently, and I would agree with the leader, I'm unaware of any case law or any judicial action that has found the original city light concept to be unconstitutional. All the elements that were in that original charter are still the law in Peachtree Corners. They chose, as the gentleman from Gwinnett indicated, to move some of those those provisions over into the statute. But they did. One of the purposes in doing that is it also allowed them to add an additional provision into their ordinance that they didn't have before, which was making it mandatory that if they ever went beyond the 1% millage rate, that they would have to do a referendum, and that was not in the original charter. So, sometimes the law is designed to educate. I remember I'm looking at Representative Carson. A few years back, this legislature passed a bill in regard to cell phone usage in cars, and we all, there were questions about its enforceability. And yet, as you look around this room, everybody in this room knows that using a cell phone while you're driving your car is illegal. And in a similar way, the citizens of Peachtree Corners have received assurances, and they know that no one that gets elected to that city council in Peachtree Corners is going to raise their taxes. And they're going to, or either create a tax in our case. So as a citizen of Peachtree Corners, I've had a very positive experience with what happened. I hope that, and I understand, why the folks in Mulberry decided to do the same. So, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Mr. Leader, thank you for the opportunity to let me participate.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Middleton, for taking your time to be here today. All right, we have less than a minute left. We have Representative Jasmine Clark and Representative Dewey McLean. I didn't know if one of you wanted to give the time to the other. It's hard, 30 seconds, that's kind of tough, I'm sorry. Well, I'll freeze them walking up. Yeah, we freeze them walking up, of course. I'm fair. Are you coming together? Yes, please go to the podium. Thank you.
Almost 20 seconds, and then I will take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Representative McLean.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say we have seen on our desk the resolution that came from our Board of Commissioners, and I just find the irony is that this bill is actually preempting the actual person who is complaining that his voice is being drowned out. So he's saying the other commissioners aren't listening to me, and then when he tells us he does not want us to go forward with this yet, then we are not listening to him either by letting this bill go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also I just want to say that as I spoke to most of you all in a delegation meeting, you know, I'm in Gwinnett County, and what I said and what my folks said was, as long as it didn't affect me, we didn't give a hoot. But after getting what we received from the county chair and what we received from the, I guess I want to say from the resolution and everything, it is going to affect the rest of the citizens of Gwinnett County. And my folks are concerned that they don't want to pay for someone else's concerns. They don't want to pay for someone else's issues. And again, you realize the service delivery is there. You know, where's fire going to come from? They're still going to get from Gwinnett County. Where's water, where's street and sewer going to come from? It's going to come from Gwinnett County. Where's parks going to come from? Gwinnett County. So all I'm saying is we're still putting things in, but there will be a void. There'll be a financial void, and that financial void is somebody's got to pick it up. Somebody's got to pick it up, and the rest of the citizens of Gwinnett should not have to pick up for something else that somebody else wants. And again, the author of that resolution is the same commissioner that I put on your desk. And what you'll get soon is the feasibility study, which states in the back that the people who did the feasibility study, they will not take in responsibility for the study. It's just something that they wrote. I read from page 1 to page 27, and then I read the back page, and I felt like I shouldn't have read any of it. So thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me this 40 seconds. But I want you all to know that the rest of Gwinnett County should not suffer for the 42,000 that want a city. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McLean. All right, Representative Lott, go ahead.
I had a question just for the author, but I'll just kind of put it out there, and actually, if you don't mind, the leader may be able to answer this question. So I've just heard a couple of points made about the rest of Gwinnett County, and I just want to make sure, does this bill limit any other portion of unincorporated Gwinnett from incorporating themselves?
No, this bill only sets out a certain portion of unincorporated Gwinnett County, not taking from any other existing city and not preventing residents in other parts of unincorporated Gwinnett from taking any other action.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lott. Representative Brad Thomas, go ahead with your comment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a general comment. This comment, no responsibility assumed for inaccuracies in reporting by the client, its agents or representatives. This is typical boilerplate for anybody that provides this type of document. I have to do this pretty regularly myself. And it's basically just saying I can't be held responsible for bad information provided to me by the client. So, because I keep seeing this, you know, quoted over and over again, I just want a clarification on what that meant. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And your expertise, Representative Thomas, what do you do professionally, if you'll share with us?
I'm a licensed professional engineer.
All right, thank you so much. All right, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'd like to motion do pass.
Second.
All right, we have a motion do pass in a second. Discussion. All right, sorry, Whip Park, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table this bill so that there can be adequate time to study this matter to ensure its success.
All right, thank you, but at this time, I'm not going to recognize your motion, but thank you for making it. All right, so we have a motion and a second. If we could have a raise of hands. If you're in favor, please raise your hand. All right, I have 15 yeas, 13 yeas. All right, those opposed? Yes, we do have ex officio members who are present today, in addition to what's on our list, and that would be Whit Burchett, Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, and Leader F. Stration are all ex officio members of the committee. All right. We can do a roll call. All right. Representative Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. Representative New. Yes. Representative Alessandra.
No.
Representative Alexander. Representative Bazemore. Not present. Representative Carson. Sorry, Chairman Carson. Chairman Corbett. Yes. Representative Crawford. Representative Douglas. No. Chairman Irwin. Yes. Representative Evans. No. Representative Gladney. No. Representative Holland. No. Representative Horner. Representative Lott. Yes. Representative Meeks, not present. Whip Park. No. Representative Stinson is not present. Representative Thomas. Yes. Chairman Wiedauer. Yes. Representative Yurda. Yes. Leader Abstration.
Yes.
Speaker Pro Tem Jones. Whip Burchett. Yes. All right. All right, give us just a moment to tally. All right, it's the same count. We have 13 yeas. And we have 8 nays. The measure passes, and we'll be heading to rules. Thank you very much for your participation, and we are adjourning the meeting.